Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ben Griffin podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Will, stopping by to talk to me about everyday philosophy, the value of faith, balance in life, and much more. But first, I thought I'd add a little something new for the start of the week. As some listeners know, I love to learn something new whenever I can. And starting off this week, I visited Nolan Moore of Grunge.com, where he tells the story of the 1910 Halley's Comet crisis. When Halley's Comet first began its approach in 1910, it ignited interest in the public. Hotels started offering deals for folks to sit on the rooftop and watch the comet pass. But not everyone loved this amazing event. One Camille Flammarion had the crazy idea that the tail contained poisonous gas. The New York Times did a piece on him, which led to other newspapers retelling his message. This ended up causing a hysteria of false advertising. People broke into stores to steal gas masks. Some businessmen created anti-comet pills. People even began to plug the keyholes in the doors to keep the gas out of their homes. But when the comet passed, it was all proven worthless, as no one was killed by the poisonous gas. That's it for this week's interesting story. So thanks for tuning in and enjoy the podcast. All right. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, it just starts up just like that.
All right.
Well, I guess I kind of want to start where I first met you, because I don't really know you personally yet.
Yeah.
I believe I met you first at the RA training. Yeah. I've been having a theme of having a lot of RAs on. It's been fun. It's been always interesting, because every one of them is a character in their own right.
I'd say that's true, yeah.
Yeah. But you're also a communication guy. So I'm kind of curious, like, what's your major? Your communication, what are you minoring in?
Sure. Yep. So my major is communication, as you picked up on, and I'm minoring in philosophy and political science.
So you have the two minors.
Two minors. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I've always been curious too, because the first time I really got to talk to you, we were in
freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech class.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we had a lot of discussion about philosophy, kind of worked into government. Where did that interest come to you? Because it's always been kind of a way that I've seen you. Kind of like if it's a snapshot of Will, it's Will with a philosophy textbook running off to a corner to read something. It always gets me it just makes me laugh every time.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I've really found a love for philosophy in college. If I could go back and start over again, I'd probably double major in philosophy and something else. I don't know what it would be. Probably not comm. A lot of the people that I admire have some background in philosophy or are intentional about taking a philosophical approach to life. So whether that's Professor John Houston, who's here, or Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I know we've both talked about. There's a few other people that I look up to in that regard, and so I've kind of taken it on, and I think that's how I'm best able to think about life. So,
what was there ever like? I've gotten a chance to talk to Father Rene of the philosophy department. Love him; he's awesome.
Yep.
He has this moment that I never heard this term before, and I'm kind of curious to see what you think about it. He calls it like the light switch. There's a point in your life, the intellectual light switch or the intellectual spark that you kind of take off and you're like, oh, now I want to like learn all this stuff and I'm starting to develop. And you hit it here. What was that like switch for you? Do you remember, or did it just kind of hit you in the middle of the night?
Yeah. I think it actually happened at the end of high school. Though it's something like thinking deeper in general, I think is something that has always been a part of me, which is really, it's an abstract thing. Everyone's capable of it. It's not anything that makes me special, but
who's willing to go there?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It was at the end of high school. I was in an AP English class, and we had like a 2-week crash course on some philosophy majors or on some philosophical stories. And I remember learning about Sisyphus and, the image of rolling the stone back up the hill day after day.
Yeah. Oh.
And that really just stuck with me for some reason. And I had no, if you said like Plato or Socrates or some of these people, I'd be like, oh, they're philosophers. But I had no concept any deeper than that. And I think that was sort of what I was looking for all through high school. And I just never encountered it. And that I was like, this is important, guys. I was thinking in my mind, like we gotta think about this stuff, And so I think that was sort of the moment. And then so when we were coming into college, they had I don't know if they still have this form, but they had like an interest form list. It's like check the boxes of things you'd be interested in, and philosophy was one of them. And I'm like, I would, I didn't come in with that as my minor or my major, and like, well, let's check it out. And we got randomly placed into Dr. Houston's class, and I was like, I need to be thinking about this. Like, this is what I like. So
yeah, and it just grew and grew because now you minored in it, but now you really love it. So it's kind of amazing to see that it's grown too.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Man, what was I? This is what happens when I write a script and I'm not looking down. I get caught up in my own thoughts when you say thoughtful. Man. But last time I really got to talk to you, you were running off to read a book. What group are you into right now? It was a Greek philosopher, and I'm trying to remember. You were reading. Oh, you've probably gone through a couple now.
I'm trying to remember what it would have been last semester. I didn't have a philosophy course last semester. I don't think. I read The Catcher in the Rye, which I found very philosophical. Okay. I might have mentioned that to you. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't. I have to though. I'm making a book list. It's been.
I just made one. You got to do it.
I got to do it, and I got shameless plug. I got Audible for so I listen now, and it's made a hell of a difference because I like listening to really I like almost scientific research books. Right now, I'm reading a book called Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock.
Cool.
And it's about this idea that we forgot about a civilization before. It's over 10,000 years ago, and we're finding all of these ruins in Turkey. One is called Göbekli Tepe, and I'm hoping to have Nevin, who we both know is an RA. He specializes in Turkish studies, and I'm hoping to have him on to talk about it a little bit because he has some working knowledge of it.
Sure.
But it's this idea that there were the cultivators of humanity, that there was an advanced civilization that was able to reach around the earth, and that's why there's such similarities everywhere we go, is because there was a constant stream of knowledge of agriculture. Agriculture is the big one because there's always a farmer depicted, whether in Egypt or in the Amazon. They're wearing the same helmet. They have the same very thick lips. They almost look like the same person, and they all have the same little almost linen bag.
Oh.
And it's interesting. It's an interesting book. It's outside of my usual range. I've never thought of it before, but it's just interesting to be around new ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it should be fun.
Well,
he's interesting.
That's what it should be all about around here. So.
Yeah, no, and he's got an English, a strong English accent, and it's just I could listen to you and you could lull me to sleep. It's like a warm glass of milk of a voice. It's amazing. Right. I love it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So I have to ask though, how did you come into communication? You kind of knew in high school, you like philosophy, but you chose. My mic's tripping. You chose communication. Why did you jump into communication, or did you just kind of go instinctually
Yeah. I wish I had a grand story about this, but it was pretty simple.
Don't worry. I did it because I thought the classes were easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I found pretty quickly. No, I was going through. It was a similar time with the form that I just mentioned. Hey, what do you want your major to be? There's some form you fill out when you're coming in, and I was talking to my parents about it, and my dad's both of my parents, but I think my dad kind of prodded me about it a little bit. He's like, you should try communication. Well,
yeah,
it's we're going through the list of stuff, and I'm pretty helpless in the harder sciences and mathematics, so so that was sort of out of the question. I'm trying to get better at that, but that's not my area of expertise.
You and me both.
but I do like it.
Yeah.
But so my dad was like, well, you should try communication. I mean, my cousins, I have an older cousin, Tom, who graduated with a comm degree 3 or 4 years ago. My cousin Megan, who I think we might have talked about, she graduated here last year, and she used a comm degree. So it's sort of in the family, and it's like it's a safe route. You get a job, but I couldn't be that close to the identity of the rest of my family, so I needed to mix it up a little bit.
Play around with the whole minors and everything.
So,
what do you hope to do with all of it? Like, I know that's a big, grand question for most college kids, and we get tired of answering that. But
it's something you got to face, though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've been looking at some business compliance jobs. So you'd be compliance officers, I think the name of it. So it's sort of an ethics position, and you'd review trade deals or business deals, both internally and externally.
Okay.
Different companies. So you can do it really in any field or for anyone. But it's kind of an analytical job.
Interesting.
Just something I played around with. I'm really not sure. I have a lot of interests, and I don't think that other people have said this before, but the American model of you finish high school, you go to college, you're still as green as can be at 21 or 22 graduating, and the sort of the expectation is like, well, where are you going for a job? It's like, well, for financial reasons, a lot of us have to grab one, but I'd like to keep focusing on learning in some way. Yeah. And so I'll probably end up going into business next year to start paying off some loans. But I think that's kind of where I'm headed for now.
I'm kind of in the same boat with grad school. I kind of want to keep going just to see what I can do with it. But at the same time, it's like, I barely know what I'm going to be doing, and what is it, 8 weeks, we're out of here.
I know.
Yeah, because you and I are both seniors. I didn't say that earlier.
Yeah.
8 weeks, we're out of here, and I'm looking around for jobs.
Yeah. Have you found anything that you're interested in at this point?
Nothing that sticks out far and away. One thing I would like to do is I worked for Minnesota United.
Okay.
And they offered, if I wanted to come back, I was welcome to come back. And I could do that at graduate school, and I could kind of do part-time with them, go to graduate school. It might be nice. But I'd like to continue doing this.
Okay.
Because I'm awful at it, and I love being awful at it.
You're not so bad.
Just wait. No, but it's so much fun to get out and do new things and try new things. I'm going to be I'm working with Johnny Benny Media, who's been wonderful. I'm going to be doing a spot on the news program and covering the caucuses, so I'm going to make a package and everything.
Wow.
I'm so excited to learn that. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, this is going to be a hot, steaming pile of shit. This is going to be great. I can't wait to start. But I love that feeling. I love constantly being like in a position I don't know fully. And I would love to work with NPR. I'd love to work with just anyone who's willing to tell stories, because I know that's kind of my niche. I love storytelling. And I love meeting people and meeting new stories and kind of drawing it out of them and hearing what they have to say. And most importantly, when they could really make a fool out of me. I don't know why, but I get a high out of that. Like, I love when I can walk away and be like, that wasn't just wasted energy of, hi, how are you? Right. How was your day? What did you have for breakfast? Can't remember. Leave.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty succinct. That's about what happens, like 70% of the time.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me because ever since I transferred here, I came with such a weird, colorful cast of characters. Yeah. I came from an incredibly liberal school to a student base that was very, I don't want to say overtly conservative, but it was just a different side of the spectrum. And to be able to have conversations with everybody here and from where I was and be able to have no conversation ever, I don't know. It's kind of like an animal being in the zoo and being put back in the wild. It's kind of like, oh my God, like I remember this now. I kind of love this.
Right.
So it's always it's a blessing in disguise, honestly, when you get folks that are harder to talk to, or you get into something that you're so out of your depth you fail. And I've had a couple of those classes here where I'm just like, no.
Right. Well, you really have to, from my experience here, you really have to look for it in your peers, because I know we've talked about this in class before too, but there's so many professors that they won't tell you that you're wrong if you are. Yeah. And they know that you're wrong about something. It could be something simple. Yeah. But I think there's a tendency here to let the misinformation continue for the sake of pride or like making people feel comfortable in classes.
Yeah.
And it's not good for the school.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't help with your balance either. I know you as a philosophy guy, balance in life.
Yeah.
It's just, that's hard. I know I'm doing stuff wrong all the time, and I should be called out for it.
You know? Yeah, we all are, and it doesn't. It can be gentle, but when it's so like in a classroom setting where it's so obvious, like if you just have a fact wrong or you state something that's incorrect, it's to everyone's benefit if
you rewind.
A person is gently told like, well, no, that's not true. Let's try it again. And it doesn't have to be. We live in such a culture of, we can't offend anybody. We can't hurt this person.
Yeah.
What will they think about this? It's like,
yeah.
We just talked about this in philosophy the other day. Who's really your friend? The person that lies to you with silence, permitting you to continue when they know what you're doing is wrong, or someone who, pats you on the shoulder and is like, hey, that's wrong. We got to try it again. Who's really looking out for you? And that's something important to think about.
No, that is interesting because I was just having a conversation about that. Long story short, we were talking about domesticating human beings, like how we kind of water ourselves down continuously and we don't have that edge.
Yeah.
But we talked about relationships and about how we don't really, I want to make sure I choose my words right, but how we don't openly just say, listen, like, that's not going to be the best thing for you going long term.
Right.
There's no investing friendships, really, you don't see anymore. There used to be a lot of them, I think, because travel wasn't really an option. You couldn't reach across the country and meet new people. Online wasn't around. So you really did invest in people, and you wanted to see them become something and flourish to be a better human being.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a learned thing. Maybe that's just a common trait of that generations before us, and maybe we're just different. But it is interesting to watch and see that people really don't want to invest that way, however it might be, whether it be their time or just placement of being.
Yeah.
Even just some words, if you're smiling and being friendly. I know I had friends, I shouldn't say friends anymore. I don't see them. Hopefully they're well, but they just never really had anything great to say. And that was the reason I kind of left them behind. They were funny. They were funny people.
Right.
But they never had anything great to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's all been said before, but we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, basically. We have to, if you're going to be comfortable your whole life, you're not going to grow. You'll never reach your potential, so.
No, I totally understand that.
You got to put yourself out there. And it's so, I was in a math class the other day, and we have these, like half the class, man, is just so, they're so ungrateful for what's going on. This is, if there's one thing to get out of my time here, this would probably be it. We need to be, myself included, everybody, we need to be more grateful for what we have.
Yeah.
Like the more that you think about life and the history of humanity, we're in such a good spot. No matter, no matter your position, if you're able to make it here and be in a classroom setting, oh my gosh.
This is the best possible time I can ever think to be alive. I
know. And so, and I just don't think that gets communicated well in classes.
Yeah.
And it seems to me so popular for the common perspective seems to be like, well, we have the system, right? Whatever it is in America or however specific you want to be. And it's like, well, here's all the problems with it. It's like, yeah. That's part of the story, but also look at how much good it creates. And I just wish that was acknowledged before we go into critiques of something we don't understand.
Yeah. So. I wonder what a solution could be to that. I wonder if it's just more service opportunities, just to have more common will towards your community, or what that is. But now that you say that, I've never really paid attention to how much good. I also think it's because I'm a communication major and because I work in news and broadcasting that I'm constantly looking for the oddities and the weird stuff, and the weird stuff usually isn't always the greatest thing. You never really, I don't write a lot of fluff pieces anymore.
Yeah.
But but it's true.
Anymore, he says.
No, oh God, I wrote a couple that were like, okay, all right, the squirrel can water ski, great.
Right. Yeah, right.
No, but that is.
Man.
I'm just happy now that I can talk to people more openly on within this community, kind of going back to our beginning. And I think what you're saying about the professors is very much true. But yeah, it always surprises me who's willing to take the invitation to come into the office or sit down in the studio and talk with me. And just the diversity of thought, but at the same time, the comfortable stance they have. I don't know. It's still coming. I know there's a lot of complaining about how people talk on campus. I know for the 4-year people, this is my 2nd year here.
Sure.
But everyone's always got a bone to pick up with people on campus or something's going on. But I just really am amazed how beautiful it is here that you can sit down and talk.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it. I mean, I've fallen into my own, oh, why does this person say that? Or that's so stupid. But it's we're all learning. We're all growing. No one's perfect, and we're never going to be. So we can either struggle our way forward together or, get lost in our own insecurities and pride. So if we can put it behind us and talk to people like we're doing now, I think that's, it's the right way to go. So.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get a panel. My last podcast, I had a great time with another guy we know mutually. I've been having RAs lately. I got to I don't know. I just all find them to be characters. But Henry.
Oh, Henry.
Yeah, he came on.
Yep.
And he was with Nathan, who I also think you know, from the cross-country team.
Okay.
Nate Dogg.
I don't know if I do. I'd probably recognize
you would love him. He's a great guy. Yeah. He kind of dresses like Steve Jobs with turtlenecks. It's great. He looks like Jesus and Steve Jobs had a child, and that child really likes to run. It's quite the pairing, man. He's a great kid. But we had this thing. We ended up calling it something like Thoughtful Thursday on a Saturday. It was just ridiculous names.
Sure.
But they came on, and Henry wanted to talk about environmental awareness. And I've never touched it because I had such a bad experience with environmental communication last semester. That class was brutal.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to take a break. And I'm not touching it. But he wants to have a panel on. And I was like, oh, my God, I better start getting ready now.
Right.
If I could start getting panels, that'd be awesome. But
no,
it is always interesting to find people who are not even challenging your way of thought or thinking. It's just they're out there and you don't want to pay attention to them. I don't pay attention to it enough. And they come knocking. It's kind of fun. But, sorry, I got to readjust on the therapy couch because now I'm like,
you're good.
It's I always feel like when people look at me, they're like, oh, you kind of look like an old Greek painting. You should be feeding me grapes or something. They're looking at me like, are you okay? Are you sure? It's like my age-old question. How does a man properly sit on a piano? I've seen it done 1,000 ways. I still don't know how to do it because of my performing background.
Sure.
Oh, my God.
Do you play music?
I used to. I used to play piano, and that star died fast.
Well, that's cool. That's just where I came from, actually. I had a piano lesson this morning. Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea that you were a musician.
Yeah, well, I try to be. I'm getting back into it. I played when I was little, and it's sort of the classic dropout story. Come back to it 10 years later, try to pick up the pieces, see what's left of the musical memory. But
I used to compete, and
that's
that
amazing.
Was horrible. Oh my God, I would be so stressed because
how old
it'd be
were you?
Maybe I played until 7th grade.
Okay.
So what is that? That's 11, 12-ish?
What was that like?
Oh, my God. It was one of these things where, first off, my mind likes to wander places, especially when I'm in situations I don't know. There's people, there's awareness of your surroundings, and then there's hyper awareness of your surroundings. Mine's aware but not critical of surroundings. I'll be going down. Oh, let me start this again. Basically, my competitions always happened at a university somewhere, like a UW Superior, UW River Falls. And in this case, I went to UW River Falls for piano competitions. And the way they judged these piano competitions was you would walk down into a practice room, like in the basement of the BAC, if you know where those are. Yeah. Those tiny little rooms with a piano in it. And there'd be a judge in there. And they had 30 rooms. So there'd be 34 judges. 4 would be walking around. If there was a really impressive piece, I'd walk over and help. But what I did is the only reason I was doing competition is because it was my thing the teacher required you to do.
Sure.
So I would go into this little room with this professor and start playing, and I could only play like 2 songs. If they asked me to start over or something like that, it was like Dance Monkey, you know, and I would just start playing.
Sure.
And I'm in this tiny little room, and I'm like, are you really sure you want to do this to me, Mom? You're just going to drop me off with a stranger in a room, and I'm just going to play piano? But it did. It worked out. I didn't do anything special with it. It was always fun. Like, I remember having fun doing it. I just hated the practice. And that's always kind of been my big thing, is if I don't like practicing, then playing just doesn't feel the same. Basketball is a different story. Like, I love basketball because I love to practice. Yeah. Soccer, excelled at because I love practicing. Like, I loved it.
Yeah.
But music was always one of those things I just was never engaged the way I could be. I did do plays, though. And that was
Do you do that at all anymore?
No, not really. I just don't have the time. No, I would do it. I probably would. I like embarrassing myself.
Sure.
I mean, I don't mind it at all.
Well, it's such a healthy risk.
Oh, dude.
Talk about a good place to grow. Theater. I wish.
Oh my God.
That's incredible stuff.
You would love it because it's just, you're out there. You're just like, okay. Yeah. And there's just really nice people. You're just doing your thing. All of them are weird. All of them are characters.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be like, that's a terrible thing to say. They know. They know what they are. Right. You know what you are, theater majors.
That's right. Yeah. Well, what a crew to spend your time around.
Yeah, no, it was a blast. I had a great time.
Yeah.
I think I got a scholar. This is how old I am. I don't even remember. I think I got a scholarship for it, of acting, and I've never touched it.
Wow.
Like, I just never went back.
Yeah.
This is more performing now. Like,
sure.
You sit on a mic. A lot of times when I get like a comedian on here,
mm-hmm.
One of my friends, Rachel, is comedian in quotes. She's about as funny as one. Came on, and I don't even know how to package this. She wanted to talk about porn.
Sure.
And I was just like, okay, we're acting now. We're going off the deep end. We're just gonna talk about this. We're gonna get it done. But it's always a performance. It feels like when you get on a podcast or you're doing an interview. Because I've been on both sides where I'm interviewing someone and they're interviewing me, and nothing is more awkward than what I'm doing to you. Like, just talking at you, just coming at you, and you got to sit there with your hands underneath your thighs, like, okay, all right, fine. No, but
man.
It's always something interesting going on. But this is actually an interesting thing I wanted to ask you about, because you were involved in the basketball team here for a while?
No.
Or you knew a lot of the basketball players?
Yeah, one of my best friends is David Stockman, who graduated here last year.
Okay.
And he was on the basketball team. So
That's right.
He's in the BVC program through the school here. And he's in Rome.
Oh, so cool.
He's doing pretty well. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, last week. And it's been a struggle in some ways, but he loves the countryside and seeing Rome, and he's enjoyed it. So
for those of our non-SJU listeners, the BVC is Benedictine Volunteer Corps. It's a chance for students to go abroad and do service all around the world. And I think we got a couple. It's like I know Israel's got spots, Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela, Spain has a couple, Italy. I think there was one.
Tanzania, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple. Philippines has one. So they're all over. It's a really cool experience. I got 2 friends going now. One's going to Mexico, one's going to Bogota, Colombia. Wow. And they're like deer in headlights. It's kind of fun to watch them go. Yeah. But I assume it would be challenging to self. Like, I don't know. I'm a selfish twat. I can't imagine sinking myself down and just being like, I'm 1 full year, nothing but service.
It's a long time, man. But in the, they advertise it. I went through the hiring process, I guess you would say. The process, I ended up deciding I didn't want to do it, but that's kind of how they frame it, is like, well, look at a year, if you try to think of it in retrospect, like that's, a 90th of your life or whatever. It might be worth the development. And it seems like a long time now for us, but.
No, it does. But it's also one of those things like Peace Corps. Everyone, I think, has at least theorized the idea of maybe doing some sort of volunteer service. I think it's good for you.
I do
think you go out there, see new stuff. I don't know. I was in Israel for a while, and that changed changed everything. I came back with a new experience. Because this is going to sound terrible, but I never experienced violence like that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I just wrote a piece that I gave to NPR for an internship. If you know the Gary Eichen internship, I was like, oh, yeah, I'll try that out.
Yeah.
And I wrote a piece about an experience that kind of shaped my way of looking at the world, and I was standing at a rest stop that was also kind of a military compound right on the border between Palestine and Israel. And we were going south through the desert. And we were just standing out there because everyone had used the facilities. We're about to get back on the bus. And I'm standing in my group. And I had the smallest group. There's 4 guys. And we stand with our sponsor. His name's Mary Jo. And we're just standing there. We're waiting for everyone to get back, do a head count, then we're getting on the bus. And just all of a sudden you hear zoom, 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 zoom. It sounds like people are just... I don't even know how to describe it. It sounds like a bunch of race cars flying by, but very far away. Like, you can hear the air being displaced.
Yeah.
And I just hear a big gasp, and we look up, and there's all these little white marks flying across the sky. And it's like, what the hell is that? And the soldier starts laughing next to me. There's an Israeli soldier, and he just starts laughing. I'm like... What the hell are you laughing? Like, are those planes? I'm like, oh no, they're missiles.
Yeah.
Those are missiles flying across the sky. And they're going, like, they're flying across the sky. And they hit about a pinnacle, if you're looking at it like a clock or sun.
Sure.
Right at 12 o'clock, right up in the middle of the air. And they just burst into little white dust. And you can see, like, the shards of, like, almost glass falling and the pieces of scrap metal falling, almost like little debris, the shining debris.
Yeah.
And he's laughing. He's like, they can't touch us. Basically, that's what I think he was saying.
Sure.
But, I saw that, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. Like, I think it was 11 missiles flew across the air. They hit every single one of them down. And just that idea of they're so practiced living in this world of violence that it's laughable. And that just changed everything to me of how I saw that world. Also, I was there when ISIS beheaded people. Like, that first initial video, I was there. And so when I didn't see the video. I refused to watch it because I kind of knew what it was going to look like.
Yeah.
But when I landed, within 48 hours, I was getting calls from, like, my mom or somebody called me. I got to remember that part. I just remember the shock because I flew in on a 777 Boeing, big plane. That same make and model disappeared while I was in the air. So they thought it was my plane.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was on this plane, and we had just landed. I think we were on the ground for maybe 3 hours, which in travel time is nothing when you're traveling international. And I started getting these, like, electronic, like, emails, like, was that you? Was that you? Like, what the hell are you talking about? They're like, a 777 just disappeared. They have no idea where it is.
Right.
It disappeared over the Mediterranean, and it was inbound for Israel or Lebanon or something like that.
Oh, my gosh.
Are you okay? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I actually remember my response, and you're going to shake your head because of how sad this is. I was sitting on a Roman centurion toilet. And
oh, no.
And we were at an old racetrack where the Romans set up for, like, because of all the time they had spent trading there, they sent up this little, like, area for training, track racing, everything. Yeah. It was right by Herod's palace. And I was sitting on this, like, open toilet. They all just used to sit all together. It was like a communal bonding thing. Like, oh, yeah, did you have this? Oh, yeah, man, terrible. Don't try it. Like, all lined up in a row. And there's a famous picture from this trip I had with some of my buddies of all of us. I think it's like 22 guys sitting on this massive long trough toilet. I wish I had a better way of describing it. Yeah. I wish it could be cleaner, but it's not. But we're all sitting there, and we're all getting texts from our families like, was that you? Was that you on that plane? And that kind of shaped everything from there. I think a week after that happened, the beheading occurred in the shores of Egypt. And then 2 days after that, the missiles. And then I lived in Jerusalem for like a week and a half. And we were there when they were doing military patrols. You could walk the street, the soldiers were right there. They always are, but I was never used to that. So when I would go shopping for like milk, for cereal in the morning, I would get up, I would go down to the corner store, get a fresh thing of milk, come back, and there'd be people running in the streets, with auto gun, Uzis or whatever they had or whatever they could get their hands on. Just amazed me. It just really, you prepare yourself for it, but reading or preparing yourself in, just the facet of your mind, I guess, and actually experiencing it are two very different things.
Right.
And I'm still trying to kind of get over what I saw there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the craziest part was the poverty difference. Like when I went from Israel and I was living, let's say like Galilee or Nazareth, beautiful cities, absolutely stunning. And you drive 2 hours across the border into Jericho, and it's a POS town. It's disgusting. I hated Jericho. But you think of all these places like in the Bible, because I grew up reading the Bible through Catholic school. I was like, this is the powerful city where they marched around the walls 7 days in a row and they all came down. They could barely afford like a subway. Like this looks like a terrible ghetto almost.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I also didn't have a great experience because I got bit by a camel there. But long story short,
My God.
it was a really intense place too, because it's also the spot where that section of desert is where Jesus went to be tempted by the devil in the Bible. So it's also a really intense stop on your pilgrimage tours. So it was an interesting mix. It was, you're in the ghetto and you're in a place where the devil has been in theoretical beliefs and Catholicism. So it was always very intense. It was interesting to say the least. Man. But no, it was an experience to be in Israel. I loved it. I that's why I'm so happy to see these guys go into the Benedictine Volunteer Corps, because I'm not particularly religious, but I think there's value to having faith. I think there's value to having at least experience to it. I'm not really a practicing Catholic, but I really do value the fact that I went on a pilgrimage, because I understand Catholics now.
Sure.
And faith has always been something that's like, it gives you a lot of skills and tools of how to deal with life. A lot like philosophy gives you that balance.
Right. So that was your intention of going to Israel? Was there sort of a religious component, or
it was marketed as a pilgrimage?
Okay.
But we were there for almost a month, I think. And it was just a trip of a lifetime. It was you can go there. On top of that, I should say this too. On top of that, my sponsor was very generous, because we filled out the tour. It was 20 people, and they boosted it to 28 because of this woman, Mary Jo, who basically made the price under $2,000 for round trip and living.
Wow.
And it was you can't pass that up.
Right.
Don't even think about missing out on this.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough that both my mom and dad agreed. Yeah, that's okay. We'll send him to a war zone. He'll make it. He'll be fine.
He'll be all right.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Good for him.
Yeah. No, it was. It's definitely definitely been a big part of a lot of stories I tell. I know that. I got arrested 4 times over there too.
What?
I got detained 4 times. I think I've told this story on the podcast. I got detained 4 times, and for a little while I was writing bits just because I was curious about how people do comedy, like we were talking before the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated by comedy, because it's such a weird thing to me that you go up and you try to explain yourself in front of the public. It's this idea of I'm going to convince you of my thoughts, which I know are effed up,
Right.
I know. So I tried writing bits, and my first bit I actually wrote is a true story about how I got detained 4 times in Israel because of my friend Jonah. And the first time I came through the airport, there were 2 bags that were identical. And one was mine and one was my buddy Lukey's. And I accidentally grabbed Lukey's bag and I carried it off because I had been up for over 24 hours. I was not myself. I just grabbed the bag and I met up with where we're supposed to be. Bag got reported missing because of my buddy Jonah. Security comes, looks at all the bags. Guess who's got it? And he's like, oh shit. I didn't think it would be you.
Yeah.
I get pulled off for 20 minutes. I say, no, I'm on a pilgrimage. And then they let me go back. I'm at the Dead Sea 2.5 weeks later. I'm blowing through this a little quick, but that's because of time.
You're good.
I'm at the Dead Sea, and me and Jonah look really similar. I'm just a little bit taller than him. And on top of that, we're sophomores, which this story, people always, it's weird. I'm standing in the Dead Sea, and I'm just kind of hanging out, and he is swimming on his face, which is a big no-no, because there's chemicals in there that are in bombs, and you got to wash yourself off right when you get out. The only thing good in the Dead Sea is the mud and the floating. That's about it. Everything else can kill you.
Right.
So he's swimming on his face, and he's splashing, splashing, splashing. And one of the lifeguards, who's also a soldier on duty, pulls up with a gun and a megaphone and just goes, whatever. And they start changing languages. They go to Norwegian, and they go to Spanish, then they go to Italian, then they go to Polish, because there's a lot of Polish people there. Finally, they hit English, and I'm like, oh, Jonah, I think they're yelling at you. And because I turned and was like, yo, they pulled me out because they assumed I was related of some sort, and they thought I was his father for a second. So they're like, you got to tell your son. First off, they walk me up this, because it's sunken down in a hole. They walk me up the side of this hill into the locker rooms, to the back of the locker room, and in the back of the locker room is an armory. It's just a full-fledged, there's guns on the wall, there's a desk, there's a man that's like out of central casting with a beautiful mustache, and I sit down, and he's like, sir, you got to tell your son not to swim on his face. I'm like, first, he's not my kid, we're the same age. And he goes, regardless, you got to tell him now. I'm like, fine, okay, whatever. Yeah. I go back down. It happens again. He swims on his face. I get pulled again. I go back up there. This time, I walk in, and he is laughing his ass off at me. Like, oh, daddy issues. Like, oh, I don't know how to, like, take this. I ended up talking to him for, like, half an hour about just living in Israel. And he's like, yeah, I just, like, live out in the middle, like, I live right out there. And he's like pointing across the desert. I'm like, just like right over there? And he's like, yeah, like right over there. I'm like,
Tatooine?
Yeah. No, I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, on the other side of the minefield. I'm like, what? There's an active minefield on both sides of the driveway when you come into the Dead Sea. And he's like, so yeah, like right over there. I'm like, yeah, I got kids. Yeah, right over there. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, dude. This can't possibly be real. And then the final time was the worst time, because they let you, if you've got holy water or anything like that, you can fly with it in proper amounts. And I had 3 like aquatane, what is it called? Aquafina,
yeah.
Water bottles. I had one of the Sea of Galilee, one with the Dead Sea water, and one with Jordan water. And I knew Jonah had run out of space in his bags. I didn't know he was desperate. So he did the exact same thing with his water bottles, only he put them in my bag without telling me.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Jonah. Getting Ben in trouble since sophomore year.
I'm still like best friends with him. I don't know how. I always ask him, how the hell are we friends? But one of the things the Israeli police do is they find the most beautiful girl in the platoon and they put her up front because it makes guys flub up their words. I was like, that's evil, first off.
That's a
first
tactic.
off. Yeah, that's... God damn it.
Right.
So I'm the last guy to go through because you're going through the checkpoint to go into the airport.
Yep.
And we all have to practice what we're saying because we all came from Palestine, which they're at war with. So you got to say something like, I'm a pilgrim traveling from Bethlehem to see the birthplace of my Lord. It was something like that. It was very rehearsed. Everyone said the exact same thing. You know, it's like a small cult walking down a terminal. But I get up there, and I'm the last guy, and I've got just my backpack. I've already checked my bag. And she's like, do you have anything that you shouldn't be flying with? And I'm like, yeah, I don't have anything. I'm just pilgrim. I just saw where Jesus popped out. Like, I'm here. What's up? You know,
right.
like, and out of this, like the corner of my eye, as she's starting to like sign off, she's looking at my passports. I see Jonah's head pop around the corner. I'm like, what do you need? Like, I know something's going to happen. And he goes, I just want to tell you I'm a little worried. I'm like, why? Why are you worried? He's like, I don't think I screwed on the lid very tight. I'm like, what lid? Wait, what lid? And all of a sudden I turn and I'm like, I feel a little like behind my backpack. Funny enough story, the blue one, that's the actual bag.
Okay.
I think that's the actual one. That got wet because of the condensation that he had from moving the bottles so many times from fridge to wherever he was. and he put it in my backpack, and there's like condensation at the bottom of the bag, so the bag's like moist. And I'm like, fuck.
Like, what did you do? Yeah.
So now I have these 2 water bottles, and she's like, what does he mean? I'm like, God, you're pretty.
Yeah, right.
So now I get pulled off to the side, and I'm like, do you have like water bottles? I'm like, yeah, I thought I had 3, but now I have 6. And they're like, what kind of idiot are we dealing with? So they walk me back, and they have my bag that I checked. They pulled it. I'm in like just behind the counter. So I'm in this, I don't want to say like a dark room, but it's like this big, like as big as the dorm. And I'm just sitting at the table, and they're like, why are you here? And I'm like, I'm a pilgrim. What are you doing? I'm here to see where Jesus was. Like, oh, I think I said something horrible. Like, I was like, I'm here to see where Jesus made. Like, I could not keep my sense about me, like,
right.
and my wits. And finally, after like half an hour, 45 minutes, they let me go, and I still have all 6 water bottles.
Oh my gosh.
Somehow, I still have all 6. I have my bag, and I just walk straight through the gate. They check my ticket. I get on the plane. I'm out. Like, just like that.
Yeah.
I didn't have to wait with Jonah. I didn't have to yell at him. I didn't have to do anything. He sat like 16 rows ahead of me on the plane. Oh, that was the longest stretch I went without. It was nice. It was a nice moment. No, but he's like one of my best friends to this day.
Right.
I still love the kid. He mellowed out quite a bit. I think I got closer to him on that trip, actually.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, there was always a story happening in Israel. There was something terrible. When I told that story up in stage, it was like, okay. But the best laugh I ever got, I was in prison. And I told that story. I told it at a juvenile detention center.
That's amazing.
And they thought that was pretty good. Of course, I went a little bit harder on the language, as I usually do.
Sure. You got to get the people going.
You got to get the blood pumping.
Right.
Yeah, I think you could do that. I think you could just throw a couple F words in there. I think you can call people a raging.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, I thought about
comedy.
It?
Yeah.
You would actually be pretty funny, I think. I think you should just walk up there deadpan. I think you should walk up there. My name's Will.
Well, I do it with my friends. I do impressions of my friends, and they like that. Oh, God.
No.
So, yeah.
I think, I'm trying to think. Impressions are like the most basic forms of the most impressive comedy to me. Like, if you're able to do a good impression, oh my God, there's nothing more fulfilling than just nailing a bitch, just crushing them out of the park.
Right.
I used to walk up whenever I had. I got to explain this a little bit. I had a very good friend of mine who very much liked leopard print things, and whenever I saw him,
skeptical.
Yeah, this is fun guy, definitely president of the cool guy club. But he wore leopard print once in a great while. Whenever I'd see it, I'd be like, "Oi, croaky," and I'd walk. I'd get really low, and I'd like hike my pants up, enough so you like see my thighs, and I'd be like walking like a crab, slinking up towards them. They're like, "Oh, this is a big one, eh? I haven't seen one like this for ages."
Right. What's he up to here? What's this one doing?
I think that's the biggest job jealousy I've ever gotten is Steve Irwin.
Sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that was
what
the
a dude.
Best job ever.
He knew how to have fun.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Great guy. I'm like looking over here because I feel like I've gone on a tangent. This is what happens to me. We go on tangents for a while.
That's all right.
And then that's what happens. It's like, you ever get off topic? Yeah, that's the best fucking thing that can happen.
Right.
But I think, do this. See, this is what happens to me. I get lost for a second.
You're good.
Oh my God. Have you ever been abroad? I've got to ask you now that I've actually said it.
I will.
You will eventually?
At some point. Yeah.
Where's like the spots you'd like to go?
Probably Europe.
It's just anywhere there.
In Europe. I look up to what my dad did. He graduated college, and he went to Creighton University.
Is that the one in Nebraska?
It's in...
Or Omaha?
Yes, it's in Omaha.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I got friends down there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So he went there, and then I think it was a year or two after, he met up with a coworker, he told me, but for most of it he was on his own. And he flew to Europe and took the train system around, saw like 8 different countries or whatever, and
Damn.
just was there for about a month, and then he came back, and he knew he wanted to see the world a bit. So
That would freak me out to go without, like, not have any idea. Like, I get scared of the idea, like, when I think back to when I was a kid, and that ability to run out barefoot with no wallet, no social security number, no phone,
Right.
no phone, nothing. You just go. Just go and run.
Right.
Like, I can't even think about that. But in a foreign
know.
country, I get the same feeling.
Yeah.
I get that same feeling of, like, this ain't going to end well for
Right.
me, is it? Am I even going to get on the right train?
I would be one to get on the wrong train.
Have you ever heard of Ryan Airlines?
No.
That's the ultimate terror of me, of why I really am. I would like to go to Europe, but at the same time, a part of me wants to fly on Ryan Airlines and a part of me doesn't. They're called like the Airbus of the sky, but it's not the nice Airbus. It's
Okay.
the broken down,
Sure.
been in the shop twice in the last month,
Yes.
got to pay to use the facilities kind of Airbus. Like,
Oh man.
you're in trouble.
Jeez.
I've always loved that backward side of Europe to me.
Yeah.
That ease of connection, but
Right.
I don't know what's going on with this Brexit thing either. I've got to figure that out, that they're leaving European Union. I don't know exactly what that means. I've got to figure that out. We got to get a British student in here. Tell me what's going on. But I don't want to be called a wanker 5 times in 3 sentences, you know?
You don't?
Well, I mean, you have the privilege because I'm sure you could get away with it. If you yelled somebody, call them a wanker across campus, I think you could pull it off.
I have a friend who likes to say that.
Oh,
It's
God.
in passing. Yeah.
That is the way to speak. What is the other one? A ninny? You're such a ninny.
And then he
I was talking to my friends.
so belittling.
Yeah, belittle the person. Get down, get in the dirt, call them something with a very regal accent.
Sure.
That's how you live your life.
Oh, man.
No, I was talking about catcalls the other day with some of my friends at the lunch table because I get on these tangents where I think, what would happen if instead of like, hey girl, you look good, you just be like, hey, I bet you financially stable.
Right.
What if you just complimented people all the time?
Yeah.
What type of society would that be? Makes me think.
There's only one way to find out. I'm not opposed to it.
You're not. Oh God, I yelled that across campus at CSB, and a lot of people looked, and it was not a good look. It was like I just butchered the family like cow in front of my kids kind of look. Like,
Oh man.
did you really just say that?
It's probably good. Probably
Yeah.
good for the school. Mix it up a bit.
Yeah. I wonder though, like, there are some times where I look at the school and I wonder what is kind of the unrest underneath it. Like, I think of I don't know exactly how to say it. Like, I see a lot of these classes and I'm thinking, like, what exactly is kind of the undercurrent that's going on? Because it feels like every school's got a different one. And I'm curious to see what you think about the idea of 2 different schools. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to better say this.
Like
'Cause
between St. John's and St. Ben's.
Yeah, there's like
how
this
they connect
weird
or something.
There's this weird difference between them two, even though they're basically the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty different actually, and that's might be what you're catching on to. I mean, just the sex difference is huge. I think in all guys school versus an all girls school, even though our classes are co-ed, of course.
Yeah.
It's I think it does make a big difference that it's just guys who stay here, overnight theoretically,
Yeah.
and just girls over there, But
That's spoken like a true RA.
right. Well, I don't know. I think there is something to that. I was talking to Father Rene recently about this. He brought it up. I go to Popcorn Philosophy, which is a little.
I went there once because
Did
you
you?
told me to. Yeah, I went
yeah.
there and you were like, you should try it. I was
Right.
like, okay. I
Yeah.
sat next to, I think it's Professor John, the one who's really built.
John Houston. That's
Houston.
what I was saying before.
And he could not get the popcorn into his mouth. He was just like, ugh, and just like trying to get it in. And at the same time, he was talking about sadness. I lose my shit whenever I hear traumatic things. So
Yeah.
I start laughing. And he's
Yeah.
like, ugh.
I love Dr. Houston.
He's so good. He's an absolute gem of a
Yeah.
human being.
He is.
But continue.
You're fine. Yeah, well, I think that's there's really something to the sex difference and the possibility of brotherhood and sisterhood, respectfully, between the schools. And I think that it's present in us whether we admit it or not, or acknowledge it or not, or even know about it. And it's so often thought, or the idea is so often put forward that men and women are the same. That's sort of the underlying assumption.
Yeah.
And that there's not different dynamics going on in the classes. And I just think that's not true. And I guess I hinted at that in our class. If you remember when I wrote on the board in our freedom of speech class, we were talking about ethics and, how ought we live, which is what the professor was saying. And I wrote aspiring to manhood and womanhood. And I think there is something important about the difference.
Yeah.
And the idea that men and women can, of course, both embody excellence, but they do so differently. And I don't know how, but it seems to me that that's the case. And so if we don't acknowledge that, like our professor picked it out right away.
Yeah, she did. I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
I remember being surprised by seeing that, actually. I don't remember exactly what I was thinking. I do remember seeing that and being like, oh, that's an interesting one.
Well, she wanted to get rid of the gender component. And I'm like, well, you're losing the whole point. But I actually talked to Dr. Housen after it, because we sort of vent to each other sometimes, and he was like,
that's what I get a feeling a lot of you philosophy guys really can do well. I get that you guys are, because I think he was studying like medieval era.
That's one
philosophy.
of his specialties. Yeah.
And it's just trauma, and I just like, how does he live without just like sowing the seeds of sadness?
Yeah, you really got to watch yourself, and make sure you're not too much in your own head. But yeah, I talked to him. I talked to him afterwards, and because our professor suggested personhood be written instead, so aspiring to personhood, and I liked his response. He's like, personhood? He's like, that's on the house. We find ourselves as people. Yeah. There's nothing honorific about finding yourself as a being in the world. It's what you do with it, and it's like, I do think there's something honorific to being a man and being a woman. Yeah.
Definitely in a society too, when you're called upon to be a man or be a woman and kind of fill this void that we need.
And it's this is one of my pet peeves, man, is the term toxic masculinity.
I remember this with you. Yes.
Well,
yes.
the way that it's used is pervasive. It's not helpful. So someone will observe. It's like the common thing to do now is to observe a tendency among men and say, "Oh, that's toxic masculinity." It's like, well, masculinity itself isn't toxic. You're observing, just because a man is displaying a behavior that is toxic, it doesn't mean that masculinity itself is toxic. And that is an important distinction that we seem to have just disregarded. Like, oh, well, there goes that man again, being part of himself. Because the implication of toxic masculinity is, oh, because you're a man, you can fall into this. Yeah. And it's like, well, yes, maybe, but also it's not the right way to think about it. I think masculinity in itself has its pitfalls, just like femininity. But you never hear toxic femininity. No. Like, what would that be? I just don't think it's a helpful way to think about the problems that men are facing.
No, I can totally see what you're saying. Yeah. I have always been curious too about like oh my gosh, all of a sudden the word dips out of me. I've just read the book. What the hell? Yeah. No, when we're talking about equality, especially in society, and about the toxic masculinity and how much
what people get equality?
You get well, and we all get put under this microscope and then told we're equal, and yet everyone's being judged at different rates. To me, I don't know. Right. It is a confusing time to be alive. It is the best time to be alive, but it's confusing nonetheless. Especially because I know I bring this up every podcast, but I'm always interested because we're comm majors. Yep. And you know how when you're in nursing, you study the worst disease, you can pull it out of a hat like nothing. You always know how to study that. You always know what the symptoms are because it's the craziest possible thing that can happen. Yeah. I think we're living in that right now. For comm majors is tribal thinking or this cult-like thinking where everyone kind of comes together so fast. And I bring it up all the time on this podcast because it really is fascinating to me.
I hear you, man.
But I think it's something that I don't know. I don't think people have individual voice anymore. And as a comm major, it really scares me. And
Yep.
you're like, okay, I feel like I need to stop and hear what you have to say, because you're shaking your head like I got something for you.
Oh no, I share this view with you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
another Houston quote that has stuck with me is a lot of times what you observe today is like pulling the string on a doll.
Yes.
Like you watch people and you ask for their opinion and they're like, oh, I thought of this before, or someone said this to me and they were respectable. So I'm just going to repeat exactly what they said. I've given it no thought of my own. I haven't embraced my agency as an individual at all. I'm just going to repeat it.
It's funny you say
recording
that.
Machine.
Yeah, because Father Rene, of all people,
Yeah.
the one time I met him, he was giving me shit because I gave him shit, and he likes to give it back and forth. It's fun.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
He's a good man.
But
He's a good man.
I basically just said I was having a really hard time with starting out journalism and being like, what am I interested in when I bring people in? What do I talk about? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, one thing's for certain. If they're not saying what they think, don't publish it.
Yep.
If they're not saying what they truly have discovered or found, then don't say it and don't bring it up. You have platforms, you have places. And he said, most importantly, make sure you never fall into that. And that's why I have to constantly remind myself. One of the topics I was going to bring up to you, I won't yet, but is constantly staying humble. You find yourself getting really proud, and then all of a sudden you start acting like you're an expert in everything. And I got into that this week and got humbled quick.
Yeah.
But
you really got to watch out for that.
Yeah.
And keep the words I don't know close.
Yeah.
In the back pocket.
No. But it is crazy to see, especially the way people are moving now. And it's especially our age, too. I'm a little bit surprised, too, how easily people can be manipulated.
Oh, my gosh.
It's terrifying, actually.
It's very, very scary. Well, just the opinions of some of the professors that are put forward, or the opinions from our texts, it's not all on the professors. Anyone in the classroom setting. There's such a tendency now to just go along with it, like we were talking about. It's like, have you thought about this at all? Like, doesn't it scare you a little bit if you're able to take a step back and look that, observe the class and see that, 25 out of the 30 students are completely on board and already quoting the theory to look good to a professor, or in relation to the text. It's like, do you think this is true?
Well, it's also strange because it's like necessity to learn. You have to learn it that way in order to pass the class.
That is a problem.
And
that is a problem.
That always was really, I don't know. I've struggled in classes before because I asked questions that I just never would get the answer to.
Yep.
I'm not trying to put it out on an island, but religion was a big one.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't ask, if I asked a question that challenged religion, and I didn't get an answer, I was put a peg down, let's say, because I'm genuinely curious about why people believe what they believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's starting to leak over. It's understandable in religion. When somebody doesn't know the answer, it's like it's faith.
Yeah.
You just got to blindly go on it. And that's a beautiful thing, in my opinion. But that's starting to leak over into my field with communication and journalism.
Yep.
I think it's going into poli-sci heavy, where it's becoming more faith-based than it is becoming factual-based. This is the only time where I've met people, and I'm not a political person. I don't like to bring politics up.
Sure.
But this is the first time I've ever started to invite people onto the podcast and be like, okay, and then what political side do you usually go with? Are you left, right, Democrat, conservative?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, I'm not a Democrat. I'm on the left, though. I'm not a classic Democrat. Or I'm not a conservative, but I'm not a classical conservative. I'm more liberal. Like the variation, like I understand that you fall somewhere on a meter and you can fall anywhere on this plane.
Sure.
But the fact that there's so much disagreement between a classical Democrat and what we would now call the left Democrats, it's almost like a totally different world from the 90s to where it was now. Because that's when I last see a lot of fundamental basis in your political beliefs were formed in the 90s. Because then you had the conservative period. So the liberals really draw off of that period. I don't know. It really is interesting to me because it's like a totem pole. If you're not this liberal or if you're not this conservative, say you're a level 2 and you're talking to a level 10. Well, that 10's not going to recognize you because you're not as liberal as them. That's crazy to me to think about that even within one party. a group of people that have, in general, similar morals, not exact, but similar, have such a hard time uniting.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a few clips of the Democratic debate from a few nights ago. I don't know if did you see that at all?
No, I was not able to.
Yeah, I watched a few clips of it. I didn't watch it live, but it was just like the state of politics on both sides, as is commonly said. But we don't know how to have discussions anymore. No. It's not clear. There's no acknowledgement of a starting ground or things that we should agree on. It's just character bashing and straw man arguments. And it's if we hold, I think, and Jordan Peterson sort of opened me up to a lot of this. If we hold ourselves accountable for all the, or if we hold other people accountable for the evil within them, you're treading into dangerous waters, because we all need to acknowledge that we have a capacity for evil. And I think that's where a lot of the problems on the left start, I would say.
Yeah.
And the right has its own faults, as far as I can tell, but that is really a problem for the left, I would say, because the it seems like the usual blame, or the typical blame, goes right to a system. And I think evil lies within the individual too, making the decisions that impact the system. So there's a deeper level of analysis that has to be reached, and it's I think it would be more common for a person on the left to say, or some of the more progressive extremes, I would say, to say like, oh, how could a person ever do that? Like, no one in their right mind would ever do that. Yeah. It's like, well, we're not as rational as you think. That would be my claim. We don't act that way, at least.
There's still this weird animal side to us.
Yeah,
like we're still we are animals.
yeah, and I just think that's really an important thing to realize, because there's sort of we have the privilege at school of being able to, oh, well, I'm at college, like these other people here, this group mindset of like, well, these people are impacting the system this way, and they're doing this. It's like, well, you're probably a part of it in a way that you don't know. There's the idea in Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, which might have been the book that I was telling you about before, actually.
Probably. But you were eager to read that. I was like, this is a different cat. This is somebody different. Okay.
Well, there's the idea in there that actually we're responsible for everything in the world, and there's no way for you not to be connected to the happenings of the world in some way. And so really it's on us to make a change for the good. And I think if we're breaking it down and looking too narrowly at the systems and just looking at the pieces, you sort of miss the whole picture and how you can make a difference. So I'm not into blaming certain groups of people arbitrarily for the problems of a society. I think we all have a part to play, and if the society's faltering, we probably have something to do with it. So, no, it's kind of abstract and off the cuff, but
no, that's why I wanted to get you in here, because it's always interested me, because I have such a hard time picturing all of this at once, and you are very good about picturing kind of the full idea or where we could go.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to have people lean into, like, can you paint a picture for me? Can you help me out here?
Try. I don't know.
Yeah, no, because the only one I've ever thought of is, one of my favorites is the idea of, with this tension of everyone breaking apart. I know this is going a little different direction, but everyone breaking apart, it's kind of like going to the gym. It's you're tearing the muscle, and hopefully at some point we're all going to heal and kind of come back together. But at the same part, we're starting to go off and look at different pieces so much that we're not seeing the whole thing. And I think that's a better image than the muscle, because I don't know if we're all going to come back together, honestly.
Well, this is sort of my problem with defining people and assigning value, more importantly, based on group identity, because it's like, what is it that you're citing, or what is it that you're thinking of that deems, for example, sexuality more important than ethnicity, or ethnicity more important than sexuality, or that sort of thing. Those seem to be the common ways of defining people now. It's like, oh, well, what class are you in economically? What color is your skin? And what sort of people do you find attractive? It's like, well, there's an infinite number of ways to categorize people. Why are those so important?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's not so obvious. And that's why I think this is sort of where faith comes in for me. But I think we're all unrepeatable selves. And so there's something unique beyond any sort of categorical description of aesthetic, or like, the way we look, or what color we find ourselves, and that transcends any sort of description. So I don't like thinking about like, oh, that we have this group of white people who are straight, or this group of Latino people who are gay, or black people who are whatever. It's like, okay, we don't know anything about them really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just don't like looking at the world that way. I don't think it's helpful, and I think it's actually demeaning to the importance of the groups. Because I'm not saying that, oh, like, white people have no value, black people have no value, or like black in itself, that's something I've thought about, or white in itself. But there's so much more to us than that, and if we look at people that shallowly, it's not helpful. It doesn't move the conversation forward, because we haven't gotten to know them. Like, that's one thing I think about. Like, notice the ways that we define the people, or we describe or categorize people, has nothing to do with their choice. And this is a lot of times something that's done by the more extremes on the progressive side. It's like, well, we have these poor people who are colored, say they're African American, and some of them are gay, and they're the most vulnerable community. It's like, well, they might not be able to control really any of those three things. They're born into a tough financial situation. They find themselves black, and they can't control who they're attracted to. It's like, why are we judging them, or why are we basing their value on something they can't control? It just seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't gotten to know them well enough. So I'm just not a fan of that sort of talking point, and we went through that a lot in freedom of speech, and that just drove me nuts every day. And I tried to fight the professor on it a little bit, but the class was always so quiet too. I just wanted other people to speak up, but nobody really said anything. So.
The thing, I think, what has interested me a lot, especially when you're saying things like class got to speak up, I don't think many people know how to. I certainly don't. Yeah. I certainly don't know how to argue. I realize from working with sports and things like that, I am far from ready for a debate.
Well, that's the problem, is I don't think we even should start with arguing.
Yeah.
But the classes are framed that way. Like, who disagrees with this person? It's like, well, why start there? How about, what do you think about that? That's just not commonly put forward. It's like, well, who agrees? Who disagrees? It's like, well, how about we try to make something of it, or think about it before we, I disagree with that point. Where's this side said something? Well, where's the other side? Raise your hands. Like, it's like, that's not helpful. It doesn't move anything forward.
Yeah.
So I think that can happen down the road, because we are going to run into disagreements. But the common, it's so commonly put forward to, it's like, oh, this person said this. Well, we have to find some counter evidence right away. It's like, let's think about these things.
Yeah, just kind of let the thoughts sit out there. No, I'm just going to say that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think I've ever been in a class where you just raise your hand and be like, yeah, I agree. I don't know why, but that just feels right for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And just let that thought sit.
Yeah.
And take your time with it. One of my favorite interviews I ever had was, I don't want to publish it or give it away, because I edited it quite a bit, but he sat and I was talking about this guy about technology.
Yeah.
And he took long pauses, like 34, 35, 36 seconds. I was like, this is going to be now you're telling me like this is valuable to you, because you're willing to put your time into it.
Right.
And I'm happy to see that sometimes there are professors that are like, I'll give you a chance to think about it. But I guess in those classes, like the one we were in, we didn't get any time really. And if we did, it was in groups. And when you have groups working together, everyone feels inclined like they have to say something rather than, can I just sit and think about this for a minute?
Yeah.
But
I agree.
No, it is interesting with education, the variety you get, because it was not like that when I was at Superior. It's better here, but even here, I can feel the rush. I can feel this pressure to be a certain way.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a very interesting thought you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a different expectation coming into school because I know you shared before you went to Catholic school when you were little.
Yeah, I went all the way through high school.
Wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went until 6th grade, and then I've been in the public system until I came to college. But I was just expecting that Catholic views would be incorporated into classes more, or just mentioned as a possibility, or the church's stance on some of the issues. And the absence of that, I think, really detracts from people's education, because
That's funny to me.
We claim to be a Catholic school. That's how we're advertised.
Yep.
I mean, we have a monastery that started the school here, right? But if you go into a classroom, you would have no idea at either school. And it's like, well, we can, if we're going to claim to be a Catholic school, then we should be one, so that people know what they're getting into here. I mean, I feel like more or less I've gone to a public school for at least the last couple of years.
Yeah.
This
has a lot of elements. It is a public school. It's just got it's got monks that live here with us. That's about it, because it is a liberal arts school, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It is a liberal arts school, but I think we're missing a lot of the depth and beauty of Catholic teaching that could just be introduced as, this is part of the class, and because you've chosen to come to a Catholic school, we want to inform you on the church's view on this, if it's relevant, but it's so absent. Yeah. And I think it'd be so helpful for students to have that perspective. But
it's funny you say that, because I felt coming in there wasn't going to be any, but I came from, my high school was St. Agnes High School in St. Paul. I don't know if you know it.
I have some cousins that go there.
Yeah,
actually.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I graduated from St. Agnes.
Cool.
And it's heavy conservative traditionalist, pre-Vatican I.
Wow.
Masses, everything like that. Everything's in Latin. Every other mass is in Latin. So it was kind of interesting to me coming in to St. John's, because I had heard things about, they're not as Catholic as us, or they're all this. But we got drilled. I mean, drilled. It actually would turn me off a lot of times to talk about faith, even though it's something fascinating to me.
Right.
Is because they wouldn't answer a lot of questions. Here, at least with the monks, I can go and find those questions, and you can attack it that way. Yeah. Attack's not the great word, but go and actually ask them. But I understand what you're saying, coming from a public school and being like, it's St. John's.
Yeah.
But yet I feel like I'm in St. Joe. I don't really feel it the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of have a similar arc to my story, because I came from Catholic school, like I said, thought it was overbearing, thought a lot of important questions weren't really answered. I mean, when I was little, I wasn't able to think like I am now. Of course, we're all very young, but I do remember.
I would appreciate it if you were just like all the way through. It's always on the gas pedal.
No,
I'm always this way. No. I've always been this way.
That's no way to live.
Live hard, die hard.
You gotta relax. No, you gotta relax, and you can't take yourself too seriously. It just gets, it just gets stupid. But I do remember one thing. This might have been sort of the dawn of deeper thinking for me. I was in 4th grade. I don't know the grade, but I was in the pew, and we were listening to a homily, and the priest was talking about God's call for us and God's plan.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand the notion of free will. I still don't, but I think we have it. I think we have to. But anyways, I'm sitting in the pew, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, so God has a predestined plan in my mind. I don't know how that would translate to the mind of a 4th grader, but I'm like, man, so I don't have a choice of what will happen to me. That's sort of how I was thinking about it. And I'm like, and then I was listening again, the priest was saying, you'll find as you grow that what you want to do and what God wants to do start to converge. And I'm just like, is that possible? If I don't have a choice? That was and I just it faded, I enjoyed the rest of the mass or whatever, but I came back to me a couple years ago. I'm like, I was thinking about this when I was little. I just remember having the moment in this pew, I could go back to about where it was. I remember where it was in the church. And I'm like, man, I don't know. It's just
that stuff is scary when you can look back and you'd be like, there are elements of who I am right now.
Yeah.
That just for a brisk moment,
it
hits you.
Right.
And I have a letter I wrote to myself when I was a freshman in high school on my first day. I still have it because I predicted basically the type of character I would be in 8 years' time.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely, I'm not a fortune teller. I ain't that brilliant, but just something within us somehow has an instinct to know where we're going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see fourth graders sitting in there hearing about vocational destinations.
Right,
and
exactly.
Like, oh, okay then.
But there's sort of a trajectory to our lives, you know. There's something it's indescribable, it seems like you have an idea of where you're going most of the time if you're able to be honest with yourself and you really, can kind of get underneath yourself and the personalities you put on to get through your day, which is so common. But
just going off the personalities, I kind of want to float a question. It's going to sound very large scaling, but take it however you want. Sure. I like to ask very thoughtful people this all the time I got to make sure I say this basically right. Is there like a true happiness, that balance in being successful? Yeah, that mic's a little wobbly, so however you need to move it.
This is good.
But just the idea of pure truth as being true happiness. Do you have any thoughts on that? Just
truth or happiness or both?
Just within your life, do you think there is truth to your life? Do you think there is pure happiness or do you think that living your true meaning involves happiness? I guess that's a better way of kind of combining the two.
Sure. I do think there is truth in our lives. And I think there is happiness in a lesser form. I don't know if we can truly be happy in this life to the full extent of the word.
Mm-hmm.
There's the prospect in the Judeo-Christian teaching that you're happy when you're with God, right? So when we pass away, if we go to heaven, that's where we'll find true happiness and be in paradise. But in this life, I think we can get pretty close.
You know? Yeah.
And I do think there is truth through our lives, if that was what you were after.
Yeah, I just always like to float that idea of truth because everyone, I think of it kind of like clay. Whenever I just throw it out there, even with no context, people always make something of it. And it's kind of interesting because it's always something different depending on where I go. So I try to bring it up once in a while with a philosopher because it seems to be this weird piece where every philosopher has thought about it and ended somewhere different, yet they all have a concurring belief on it somehow. Sure. I don't know, like an undertone.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a... I can't wrap my head around it, but I think it's what I live for at this point is finding the truth and seeking to live and speak truthfully, because I think you're more aligned with reality, and being more aligned with reality leads to more authentic experiences, and I think happiness is in authentic experiences.
Yeah.
It's just sort of your soul laid bare to the world around you, and you're encountering things in their full capacity, and you're engaging with the world in as real a way as possible. And I think there's truth in that, as abstract as it is. But there has to be truth, like in a literal sense, like in objective truth. There's things that either can exist or don't, which is a great place to start for. That's really where we start in philosophy. Like, there has to be things that are true, otherwise we're all wasting our time. And we're the stereotype, of, the thoughtful person that's poor for their whole life.
No, it's so good to get that reminder once in a while, because I hear, that's not true. This is true. That's not true.
Right.
There is objective truths.
Yeah.
But
there have to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never would have made it as a philosophy guy. I couldn't do all the reading, but
it
looks like a great time.
It's not so bad. I'm not as involved as probably you think I am. I mean, I do it as a minor. It's just it's just, I'm still exploring it. I don't know. It's a place that's different than the rest of academia in my experience. So. Yeah.
Really? It's just kind of people. Yeah, you always think of people with long beards just kind of thinking.
Right. Well, I mean, it goes back to like you're told that you're wrong if you are. you know. Or that's not an uncommon thing to say, like, I don't think you're thinking about that right. And even as simple as that, something as simple as that, I find so valuable. That just, like, I don't see it in other classes. And if we're not being honest with each other about our opinions, it's like, how valuable is the class? Like, we're moving blind.
No, yeah.
So
well, that kind of reminds me of one of the questions I really hammered with the professor of our class.
mm-hmm.
Do opinions matter? Honestly, I have a hard time believing they do,
Mm-hmm.
especially now. And kind of builds off of that is none of us can be wrong. None of us can really be right. And I know opinions are just objective, right? But that idea of kind of playing conversation off of opinion to try to find a deeper meaning, it just...
Yeah. Well, I think people can be wrong and right.
You really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we miss the mark all the time, but I think people can be right about things.
I'm sorry, there's a wire caught on my
That's
computer
okay.
there.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I think that's... No, but yeah, I shouldn't say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're often, I would say, wrong more than we're right. And there's sort of a saying that we just brought up the other day in Dr. Houston's class. You know, you have to be the fool before you can be the master.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, cliche as it sounds, it's like, well, what is a master? It's someone that understands their craft and is engaged with it over a long period of time. They know something more than other people do. And at that point, they, I guess you could say, hold more truth on the matter than someone else, you know. They're going to be more right about the topic, but I don't know, that's one way of thinking about it. But I do think we can be right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it seems like factually, I think of always factual.
Mm-hmm.
But when you reach out and you're just like trying to make sense of everything,
yeah,
people tend to take it almost as a joke, where you're like, I've really sat and thought about this for a while. It's like, yeah, but I haven't, and I don't want to be on that length of being trapped in that idea that you've spent the time working with.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I think it gets misframed a lot of the time. Is it's like just the philosophical life in general. It's like, a lot of nights of drinking and beard stroking and pondering and internal sadness and angst, and maybe you'll find the light of day by the morning. Like it's just like oh man, and you can fall into that, but the really we all have to be philosophers. It's just a matter of how good we are at it.
Yeah.
At some point you have to face yourself and say, what do I want to do? And then maybe you think of something and it's like, well, why is that better than anything else? It's as simple as that. Like anytime something gets too abstract of like, well, why would you, or like my notion of philosophy when I think of it is like what I was describing, like like it's blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, I don't want to be that. It's like that's not me, but it's everyone really has to do it whether they realize it or not, and you can we can call it whatever we want, but what it is facing yourself and using your rationality to think about where you are in relation to the rest of the world. And we all have to do it.
Yeah.
To make decisions. So
man.
Yeah. That's you can go way too far into this, and that's why it's just my minor. Like I was saying, like I was saying, if I were to start again, I might major in it, but I'd have to double major because I already get way too far in my own head, and that breeds its own insecurities. So
no, this is the podcast where I wish I filmed them, because everyone would be able to see I'm just tipping my head back like, oh my God. Like, no wonder I feel like mush right now. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm being overloaded by thoughts. This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant.
Oh man.
No, but I can definitely see how you can go down the rabbit hole, and how
right.
It was interesting to me to talk to John, especially in his study on trauma. And I was like, that has got to be interesting when you go down that rabbit hole, how far you can slide. And
yeah,
I'm sure the opposite can be true though.
Well, here's one thing. I brought it up before, but The Catcher in the Rye sort of addresses this question.
Really?
I think I can be on record now saying this is probably my favorite book
really
I've ever read. Oh my gosh, my brother. I should talk about my brother more. I have two. So I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest of. I'll get back to the book. I'm the oldest of
good.
siblings. So it's myself, a younger brother, 2 younger brothers, Sam and Nathan, and a little sister, Caroline. And Sam is incredibly brilliant. I mean, like he is gifted. He is really gifted. He's in high school, and we talk a lot about this stuff. But he was in an AP English class, and I had AP English, but I kind of came in late in my typical like scandalous academic ways, but just skating by and pretending to know things when I was a fool. Still am, but and he really does it the right way, which I admire. And he was like, Will, you have to read The Catcher in the Rye, because like what we're doing now in this talk, when I go home for a break or whatever, this is like what Sam and I do way into the evening. We talk about life and the woes of our culture and how we want to live differently, and things that we think are good and movies and so on. But he's like, you have to read The Catcher in the Rye, and I'm like, I'll see if we have a copy. So between St. John's and St. Ben's, there's one copy of the book between the two libraries. It was at St. Ben's at the time, and so I went over there and got it. And oh my gosh, that is how I felt through high school. Like that is spot on, and it's so often mischaracterized, I would say, or misunderstood. Probably I'd go with misunderstood. But check it out, man. You could read it. It's like 180 pages, and the print is big. So like you could do it in a couple days if you
got me there.
To. Oh my gosh,
I'll read it.
It's kind of goes into realizing for the first time that a lot of people are fake. And aren't interested in the truth or living better. They're just saying what they need to get by. And it's sort of a teenager's realization that that's how a lot of the world functions. And I was like, this is what I was thinking about in high school, man. And I was too foolish to know how to put it into words, and much too angsty to be of any use to the issue, because I would just complain or something, and that's not helpful to anyone, especially myself. But it's like, man, that book is on to something, and it rings so true to me. So I would check it out. There's my plug of the podcast.
There's your plug. Read Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye, man.
I will probably grab that. Hey, I probably will. I've been trying to read more books, and I'm usually terrible. I'm a documentary guy.
Love documentaries.
Love them, but I there's something about finishing a book that just gives you a satisfaction and an understanding of the topic.
Right.
I think it's just the time you spend with it. It's like the longer you spend with a person, the more comfortable you become.
Right. And
the more you try to understand them and at least work with them. You don't have to agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'll check that book out. That would be a nice little thing for me to do this week.
Yeah.
Right before spring break comes barreling across. Oh my Lord.
I know. That's coming up quick, man.
God.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can call that here.
Sure.
I mean, it's been I've trapped you in this room for far too long already.
You're good, man. I don't even know the time.
That's Will 2020. It just kind of happens, man.
Yeah.
No, but thank you so much for stopping by. I know you're a very busy individual, but I really wanted to get a chance to sit down and talk to you. At least pick up a couple of gold nuggets on the way. I know it's always every time I sit down and talk to you, it's like, okay, I'm probably gonna learn something now.
I really appreciate you.
No, it's always fun. It's always fun to have you.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you to Will.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to, as always, I should say, get in contact with the podcast, feel free to email us at thebengriffinpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a new Minds account, Ben Griffin. Hit us up there. And thank you to those who have been reaching out to us on Instagram and Twitter. We always appreciate your feedback. With that, again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, have a nice day, everybody. Thanks.